I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, for an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their
right.
Unlike the right that someone has, all our rights exist in context.
What's the context for a second medical opinion?
Because you're disrespecting the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you see in the group, you're just dealing with Afro-Guyanese issues. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a vision, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well.
Pleasant Monday evening to you. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard Craig. Tonight's show is called the Kissoon-Craig Dialogue, which we've been doing for almost a year now in the app. Even though we have a guest, we still do our thing. Craig and I normally analyze things, and there's so much to analyze. But we will have our guests as usual. Guests aren't easy to come by, but we'll have our guests next week, hopefully Monday, and we will continue with that. But in the meantime, Craig and I looked at Guyana, the contents of Guyana, sociologically, politically, otherwise. We start with the problem Leonard Craig has, and I didn't say has with the Ethnic Relations Commission because it's still ongoing. As you know from one of these programs in which Craig and I interact, Craig found out that his name was publicly listed as being summoned by the ERC based on a complaint by someone. That complaint was by a church person who complained to the ERC that Craig desecrated the Christian religion when in August last year, he was on the PPP platform with President Ali and Vice President Jagdeo. And he said from erection to resurrection, the PPP will take care of you. Well, that was August, and a month ago, the ERC said they couldn't locate Craig, so they put out a public announcement that he is wanted by the ERC for an explanation. Craig went into them, a delegation of the ERC met Craig, and Craig will tell you what was the interaction between the delegation from the ERC, but he wanted a public apology because it was all over the world that a complaint was made against him, and the complaint had no basis. The complaint had no basis because the man who made the complaint, the churchman, was ignorant. The word resurrection is what the Holy Roman Empire took from ancient Greece scriptures. So it's not a Christian term, resurrection. But a month is gone. Craig met with the ERC. They apologized, and he said he'd like two things. He'd like to know who his complainant was. And logically, if he was publicly chastised for saying something, then it should be publicly acknowledged by the ERC that they made a mistake. So that is where we stand. The matter seemed to have been concluded by the ERC, but there's no public thing. I met Sheikh Ulhaq, the head of the ERC. Let me say before I go further, I know the Sheikh is somebody that has my undying respect and undying admiration. The Sheikh Mohin Ol Haq is an icon in Guyana. I met him and I raised the question of Craig with him because I said, I think the ERC went astray. He said he spoke to Craig, he called Craig, and he apologized. And I did say to him that I think Craig needs a public apology. Well, is that public apology? It doesn't look like it's forthcoming, so over to Craig.
Good evening, viewers. I personally would not have addressed the matter, but since Freddie led out with it, I am in a position where I would have to deal with it. For me, I would have done with that and just move on with my life, but sometimes we just have to talk about these things in public because the ERC remains one of the more well-known and leading constitutional bodies in Guyana. And when matters concern them, we must talk with them, talk about it freely. Now, those people who have followed my Facebook posts and so on know that I dealt with this thing caustically and frontally when it came to the ERC. And in that light, the ERC invited me to a meeting. I met with them. Well, not the ERC, a delegation of the ERC. And we had frank and straightforward discussions. And one thing that occurred is that the ERC agreed that they should do and say something public, acknowledging their error with respect to my case. We had some talk back and forth. I made some recommendations how they should go forward in the future. They took those recommendations on board. At least they said they took the recommendations on board. And I would hope that these recommendations were taken on board because I gave some very serious recommendations. They acknowledged that there was a breakdown in their own internal systems. And for me, that was frank and unacceptable communication between myself and the ERC. However, that was a meeting and a talk and a communication behind closed doors. But what occurred that got me involved and got me having to respond publicly to the ARC was because they did something publicly. And I believe that natural justice requires that they do a public release. Lots of time has passed and that has not occurred, so I waited, and I was going to wait and wait forever, but it assumes my co-presenter on this show probably thinks that, you should just come out with it. And as I said, I would not have said anything, but since the topic is breached, I like to deal with things frontally once it comes to the fore. And I still expect the ERC to do the right thing. But having said that though, I honestly believe that based on the interaction with the ERC, based on my case, based on what I brought to the fore and what I exposed and so on, I believe the ERC will be better for it. I honestly believe that. I believe the ERC will look deeper. They will fine-tune their systems not to make what I would refer to as a mistake again, that same mistake again. So I believe that, and sometimes that is what you want when you interact with constitutional bodies and public figures, that is what you want, that your interaction with them, sometimes caustic, sometimes smooth, sometimes rough, whatever it is, what you really want is that your interaction will produce a better product for the Guyanese people, a better service for the Guyanese people. And I honestly believe that my interaction with them, the mistake involving me, my response, and then our meeting, I believe it will yield a more refined ERC, maybe not a perfect one, but better with respect to that aspect. And sometimes that is enough reward for the effort I made in bringing this matter to the public. And for that, I think it's a positive. But the ERC need to do the gentleman's thing. The ERC need to do the to avoid a miscarriage of natural justice and just come to the public and say, look, we recognize that we made a mistake in Craig's case, and we have refined our systems, and we're ready to move forward.
Well, there are certain things that you said that has now forced you to go into obligation mode, meaning that you spent a lot of time on one of these programs saying, I'd like to know who is the Christian priest that made this allegation against me, and I am going to go and analyze him and look at his past behavior to see if there are flaws he has and why he's picking on me.
Where that is concerned, let me just interject quickly.
You promised
yes, it wasn't. I should let the viewers know. That part slipped me. I should let the viewers know that as a constitutional body, the ERC has power to act on its own motion or on its own investigation. In that, they can act if they see something, and even if nobody makes a complaint. And the ERC has what you call a media monitoring unit. They monitor what happens on the media, on social media programs, and things that come up that the public takes an interest in. And that media monitoring unit picks up on these things. But during the election period, as I understand it, they hired a whole lot of monitors that were in the audience at all the rallies of all the political parties. And apparently the monitor at that rally documented that. And so the ERC acted off of their own motion. It wasn't a particular person who made the report. They acted off of their own motion based on something the media monitoring unit picked up. So that explains why they had an interest in the matter. And secondly, my question is, why, when was it? November of last year, October of last year, or whenever?
The speech you made?
Yes.
Was the election campaign. The election was the 4th of September.
Well, so that is since August, right. Since August, why this thing was happening in February. So, you know, but it is what it is, and that's the juncture at which we are at now.
Okay, but I think what has happened, and that this is my lamentation, I think that that incident has damaged the credibility of the ERC, not in relation to you only, but in relation to their methodology.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a monitor media monitoring unit, that media monitoring unit has to comprise of specialists in sociology, culture, what have you. You cannot take a group of media people, not trained in sociology, not trained in history, and they come up with devastating critique involving specialist knowledge that they don't have. Now, for that media monitoring committee to say, from erection to resurrection, that is offensive. They have to have somebody there in with some kind of training, either in linguistics, grammar, because erection is a normal grammatical term. I have been 38 years in the media, and I know people speak about reference the masturbatory speech of a politician. Some of them say, let's see what type of testicular courage he has, meaning referring to your testicles. Those things have passed through the lexicon of normality. So if you can have a media monitoring committee and they are empowered intellectually to comment on things which is outside their intellectual remit, we are talking about opening the floodgates of abuse. Because when intellectual, for example, you have to be afraid now, based on your case, that you don't speak about the Jewish army of Israel committing genocide. You have to say the army of Israel. Because if you say the Jewish army, why did you use the word Jewish? But Israel is a Jewish state. Israel is a Jewish state. It says its raison d'etre is to protect the Jewish religion and the Jewish people. So that's the first danger about the ERC. Here's the second danger. When the Media Monitor Committee zero in on these things, they put it out they arrogate to themselves the right to make that a complaint without sifting it through the grater, without going to one or two of the commissioners. Does the commission have a group of historians or specialists in comparative politics? 2 or 3, just to cover corporation, will have a lawyer. What companies do, they have a lawyer. And when a competitor say they're selling things on the market value as if they now become predators, what the company does, it takes that statement to a lawyer. The company doesn't know if that is libelous or that is a disgraceful indictment. It takes it to a lawyer. Here is what I am concerned about, and the entire society, the entire Guyanese society that live in Guyana has to be concerned about. Is the Media Monitoring Committee, do they have the jurisdiction to scrutinize emanations in the society, and based on how they feel, they transform that or shape that into a complaint? If they have the jurisdiction to do that, the society is in trouble, the ERC is in trouble, because you need people with specialist knowledge, especially in the issue of history, linguistics, culture, to know when something is obnoxious or not. Now, for example, it is widespread knowledge around the world that in Hindu religion and in ancient and even modern Hindu society, you had, caste. So, when somebody says something about caste, is it not beneficial to the ERC for the Media Monitor Committee to run that by a religious expert or somebody? But in your case, what you're telling me is a guy said from erection to resurrection, the PPP will take care of you. Now, I think one can say from birth, But that is a question of choice. It wasn't a vulgarity. It didn't say describe a sex act and then a baby is born. It didn't say anything like that. What I find disturbing, and you need to explain that, and the ERC need to explain it. And if you're listening to this program, please live stream it to the ERC or contact the ERC. My question to you and to the ERC, does the Media Monitoring Committee has the jurisdiction to interpret an emanation from society, be it a school group, be it Boy Scout, be it a political party, and come up with their own interpretation, which results in the public summoning of,
All right.
or they have an...
Let me explain that. What the Media Monitoring Unit does, I don't think they have that jurisdiction, but what they do is look for trigger statements and trigger words. So they're doing manually what Google, Facebook, and these places use
A software to do.
algorithm and
Yeah.
software to do, right? So a software program can pick up when somebody uses a curse word. They could pick up when there is blood and lie and gory scene in a video, right? But the ERC does not have that technology, so they depend on the human eye. So that is all the Media Monitoring Unit does, as far as I understand it. They look for trigger words and trigger issues, and so on, and then they flag it. And what is supposed to happen, it is then supposed to go to a different department to look into deeply if, though it has this trigger word in it, for example, if we use the C word to explain East Indians,
Or the N word, or the N word.
N word to use for Africans, and once the Media Monitoring Unit sees that, they're supposed to flag it. You can't just let it pass because it is not in their jurisdiction to give a judgment. You got to flag it. But when the investigators start looking at it, they realize that the C word came from an innocent place where you are
Contextualizing.
or describing something to somebody.
Yeah.
And you
I've used the C word to you in the sense that there's a mulatto Creole class who said, nah man, these coolie people shouldn't run the Caribbean country.
maybe something like that.
Right.
Right. And so you know that you're not using it maliciously or
You're not directing it
to
as a derogation of someone's race.
Right. And so that is, so the Media Monitoring Unit, once they hear the word, I understand it, they have to cut out that scene and flag it. And once they do that, then you have an investigation department that then looks at it. And I understand that the investigation department has several persons, and they will, just as how a police department might investigate, they're gonna match it against the law.
And they did that in your case?
And all of that. That's what I understand. That is what I would expect them to do.
No, but you met with a section of the commission. You asked them how the people came.
I did not get down to that because the ERC, the delegation, was forthright in admitting it was a system breakdown in their system. And I think that is part of it also, that the people who should have investigated it probably did not go through all the steps that they should have. And that is the breakdown, and they were forthright in admitting that. And, so for me, that was part of a decision to move on. So basically, that is what the Media Monitoring Unit do. But I just want to plug this one thing. In explaining that to me, I asked the delegation if, in arriving at the decision to continue or to pursue the complaint, if they reach out to at least the head of the three most populous group of Christians, for example, Did you reach out to the head of the
Catholics,
Catholic Church, the head of the
Anglican,
Anglican Church, and
and
probably the head of the assemblies or the head of the
evangelical.
Adventists or something like that? I asked them that. And because I'm saying, if you ask these people, guys, do you find this offensive? And you get a majority of the answer. Maybe one of them say yes, and the other three say no.
No, well, let me cut you there. I'm sorry to cut you there. But I have to cut you so you could explain more to the... What was the statement from the ERC delegation to you about the section of your delivery that was offensive? Is it the word erection or is it the word resurrection? Because it's all over Guyana, all in diaspora. I've been with you having lunch and people would come and say, I correct from erection to resurrection. Which is the part of the statement that the ERC flagged and made the public thing about you?
I think it's the entire statement.
From erection to resurrection?
And so that's where I was going next. So when I confronted them with that, I said, did anybody in the Christian community communicated that to the ERC, that they find this offensive to the Christian religion? I say, man, this is one of the things where your pastor just call you and say, hey,
can I just
be
stop?
careful.
When you were talking to them, there were people taking notes or it was being recorded?
I don't know. I won't be able to say.
But you were with was a young man or a young lady taking notes? You would have seen that.
I don't think so.
And was there a tape on the
I don't know.
So that has not gone into the files. The conversation you had with a delegation from the commission.
No, that is the commission's internal thing. I wasn't.
But shouldn't that be part of their records?
I don't know their procedure, and I am not.
So there is no paper trail then after you left that building. 20 years from now, that would not be in their archival.
I figure it's something they would have had to bring up in their actual statutory meeting, and that will create the paper trail. I hope.
So you're saying that there may be a paper trail for that meeting you had with them, because if it is not so, I am thinking that that is a serious legal omission, because those interactions form part of the ERC's history, that 20, 25, 40 years from now, researchers could go into the archives of the ERC and see what transpired and some of the mistakes they made. And I'm surprised that you, who's an academic and a competent one, didn't ask for notes to be taken or the dialogue to be interviewed, to be recorded.
Well, I didn't insist on that, and I did not at the time think it's necessary. I hear what you're saying, but it has gone down that way. And just to conclude the thought, though, is that after responding to me, which I found a bit jocular and a bit ridiculous, the representative said that it is not just offensive material to a religion, offensive material to a racial group or an ethnic group that the ERC look at. They said the ERC look at general decency in community. And had it not been a formal meeting, I would have broken out into laughter, because I find it funny that the ERC would bring themselves down to a decency police, like going around policing. They're gonna have their hands full if they only do that, because you see it on Facebook, you see it on YouTube, you see it on the road, you see it all the time. And you just go, you are a man in the market, you just walk through the market and you got decency issues.
No, they don't mean it like that. They probably mean people of prominence and people with responsible status in the
when
society.
you are a constitutional body, you can't separate prominence from...
No, you can't, because because everybody looks up to Amitabh Bachchan. Everybody looks up. The American people look up to Kamala Harris. People look up to Christopher Gale and Usain Bolt in Jamaica. You can't have a labor, an uneducated labor, saying they should kill all those people in ABC country. When Chris Gale said it's different. And I think the ERC is making that distinction that you didn't pick up.
No,
you can't police the society.
All right, but I still find it funny, even if it's people in prominence in society. I'm asking, who is the moral judge of what is decent and what is not?
No, but that doesn't
the
deny...
ERC cannot... I don't think the ERC should put itself in that position.
No. I think the ERC probably made a mistake in using the word decency, because that's a very value-laden term. They should say we are monitoring indecent speech or indecent behavior, rather than just saying decency or indecency. And they should have been more defining in that. But I think society has a right, all societies have a right to have a watchdog, to monitor moral, ethical, vulgar dissent. If you cannot do that, then why would you have libel laws? Why would you have libel laws?
Hold for me. That should not rise to the level of a constitution. I agree with you, but it should not rise to the level of a constitutional body doing it. The media gotta have their media association, policing media workers. You gotta have political parties, gotta monitor their own people, and things like that. It's got to be somewhat self-regulatory. The society of itself should outcry when it happens in the government. There's an outcry from the opposition, and we police each other. I don't think a constitutional body should be policing and interpreting for anybody else what is the most appropriate word to use.
You're wrong. You're wrong. There's a constitutional body called judiciary, and they pronounce on whether what you said is indecent and defamatory. A single judge in a court determines that you you say, look, he like people from the other side, even though you did not say, and the guy sues you for libel, and that a trial goes on. So there is a constitutional body.
But that is different,
so
Freddie.
It can't be different.
All right, so you're talking about a court
which is a constitutional body.
Party, yes, an offended party approaches the court for an interpretation.
Which is different to you. In this case,
in this case, people are sitting like eagles on a perch on
I see the difference there.
Looking for it. It's a difference.
There's a difference there, yes, of course. But the ERC also have a dimension to it that operates similar to the court. Somebody makes a complaint.
Yeah, but
they have to look at that complaint. Of course, they have to sift it out.
Right, but in this case...
In your case, it wasn't a complaint.
Right.
But I know this is taking up a lot of time. I don't mind if it takes up the whole hour, because what is at stake here is very dangerous. And I think the ERC has made a dent in its credibility, and they can redeem themselves by doing what I think they should do. When I met Sheikh Moeen at a Muslim funeral on Saturday morning, I did raise your issue with him, and I did say to him, he said to me, and you need to acknowledge if what he said to me is true. He said, I called him and I apologized to him. Sheikh Moeen told me that.
Okay.
And then I did say to him, well, I know. Oh, he said, did he tell you that? I said, yes. And I just said yes, but I don't think you ever told me that.
No, I
can
think
tell-
I did. I did
Okay.
mention.
But I did say to him, I think Craig needs a public apology. Now we are getting into very dangerous waters. If a high-level constitutional body that is empowered like the GRA to bring people in front of the court made a mistake and cannot say in a public statement, in a press release, that we have put out a statement on Mr. Leonard Craig. Mr. Craig met the delegation. We've satisfied that there was a mistake. We have apologized to Mr. Craig at the meeting, and an apology is hereby. If the ERC cannot do that, then if it wasn't for this program, we would know that you met with them and the shake-up and the delegation. We would know that. So I think they have to do the right thing. Now here is where I'm going to put you on the spot. And here is where I want to know how you feel about the recording of history. You have been on this program since November 2024. And I remember you asked Charandas and other people to bring out information for the record of important discussions they had at a very formal state level. Now, this meeting with you and the ERC, we're hoping that it will be part of the archives when they do their statutory report. But if not, it's lost forever. But we still have this program. And maybe we could contribute to history by you telling us, that's a choice you have to make, who were the delegation of the commission that you met with.
I don't think it's necessary, but
I can't agree with that.
Let's move on from that.
No, but you see, that's the problem I have with society, is this lack of understanding of how important the recording of history is. Do you realize that your name was made publicly? You had a meeting with the ERC, and you should tell us, rather than being so extraordinary brief, why you can't say, I met a delegation of Michael Singh, Chanlawi Alawi, and Patricia Mungbari at the ERC.
I hear you.
What
What I
say
can
that?
tell you is a delegation led by Sheikh Moin what's the last part of his name?
Moin Olhak.
Olhak, right. It was led by him.
And how many other members were there?
Two.
So it's Moin, Sheikh Moin, and another person.
And two other persons.
Right. Now, if you could name Moin Olhak, what's wrong with the other
it's
person?
Up to him. You name him. He said that he acknowledged that he met.
No,
with him.
I am saying you met the delegation, and for some reason, I am saying your choice should be respected. But tell us why you don't want to tell the Guyanese people.
Earlier,
and people should call you and bash you for that.
Yes, as I said earlier when you brought up the issue, is that for me, I would not have brought it up. But at the same time, I believe that the issue should be dealt with frontally, and I had no qualms dealing with it. But I wouldn't have brought it up. I would have but I guess you brought it up because
I'm trained as a historian.
Right, because you met with you were not met with, but you ran into
Sheikh Olhak.
Sheikh Olhak, and you decided to bring it up today because this is our next this was our very next program. Or our earliest program after that. And I guess that's why you brought it up. And I'm saying I would not have, but as you brought it up, I was not gonna run away from dealing with certain aspects of the facts, but the other things I am not sure is necessary.
I've always said since I began teaching at the University of Guyana, and I taught it for 26 consecutive years, and I've said it for 38 years as a columnist. The botanist, the accountant, the engineer, and I'm saying this unapologetically, they do not understand the importance of putting things into the history books. And that's because they're engineers. That's because they're accountants. It's different with a philosophy student. It's different with a student trained in political theory. It's different with the anthropologist. Because when the society moves on, it leaves an institutional memory that people can tap into and learn about what their country was like 60 years ago. And I think that is the difference with us and the white man. Now, if the ERC wants to call me in for saying the white man, I mean it in context that the white developed countries have this insane urge to record things. Now, if you go into any church in the UK and ask the burial certificate or the burial service that went on, that the church conducted in the 17th century, that priest is going to go in the back, the room is going to smell moldy, and he's going to put out a book. That is why that since the Second World War, we've had thousands of books about people, about a Nazi secretary, and what she did and what she did not do. And I think for the recording of history, you should tell the Guyanese people you were aggrieved at what happened. And you met with a delegation of Sheikh Mohat, Miss Gloria Khan, Miss Patrick Singh, and that is how the discussion went. I do not understand why you would want not to put that in the recording of history.
I hear you. All right. I think we have exhausted the topic.
But you or me? Are you speaking for me?
We have.
Oh, you're speaking for me? You speak.
Haven't you?
No, I haven't exhausted it because this is what concerns me about life in this country, and I've seen it all at my age. I don't understand how the ERC could behave like that when the ERC is a residue of the moral protection of the society. When you fall down, it is morally upgrading in the eyes of the nation to say we fell down. Look, I remember I wrote a column 15 years ago in which I quote the famous song by Elton John, "Sorry seems to be the hardest word." Nobody in this country, not a single soul, has the willingness to come forward and say, "Oh, I'm sorry." Now look, I got a call from the advisor to the president, Dr. Randolph Prasad, a scholar of extensive talent. And he was responding to something I said on this program. You weren't there, I had to carry the program by myself. He said he liked what I said about Mr. Ralph Ramkaran. Mr. Ralph Ramkaran said that if it wasn't for the Starbuck News, we would not have had free and fair elections. The Starbuck News was born at the beginning of 1987. I said in that program I was almost denied my right to earn the President Medal as the best graduating student because I was known as a critic of the government. I was known for fighting free and fair elections. Dr. Randy Prasad said to me that he agrees that years and decades before, people had sacrificed life, limbs, blood to fight for free and fair elections. And the names are so large: Chedi Jagan, the PPP, the WPA, the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church. Standing tall with Jagan is Father Andrew Morrison. And Ralph Ramkaran, he's going to write in the Starbuck News that if it wasn't for the Starbuck News, born in 1987, and Bolanard Jagasar and Jagan Bolanard died in 1973, running to save the ballot boxes from the army picking it. And he is going to say, if it wasn't for Starbuck News, we would not have had free and fair election. So Dr. Randy Prasad called me to tell me, no, he can't agree with what Ramkaran has said. I wrote that Ramkaran should not have said that. You know, Mr. Ramkaran reads my columns because you say anything about Mr. Ramkaran out of the way, you're going to get a libel with. And I cannot understand why in his subsequent columns in the Starbuck News, he didn't say that that was an amplification I should not have made. I cannot understand why the ERC, for this constitutional respected body, cannot issue a statement. No. I know, I am saying to the public, I know there have been 4 press releases by the ERC since your episode with them. 4 press releases, because I'm on the string where I get those emails, on the journalistic string where I get those emails. And that is my problem with this society that, look, Cathy Hughes. Craig, I believe the Alliance for Change was devastated at the 2025 election, one of the reasons being Cathy Hughes. It was in the papers, it was on the Freddie Kissoon show, that Cathy Hughes, close comrade for 15 years, asked her for in his capacity as a state official in charge of the Durban Park thing, asked her for the cell phone of Minister of Health Valda Lawrence, and she said to her close comrade, I can give you the cell phone of a minister. And the whole world knows if it was somebody from the mulatto Creole class, if Gaskin, Dominic Gaskin or Raphael Chotman had asked her, or somebody from the business, her business associate, she would have given in. And all Cathy Hughes had to say, that thing came out into the public 2 years ago. All Cathy Hughes had to say is, reflecting back on that incident, he is my comrade. We sat next to each other in the house. He was a high state official at the time. And looking back at that, yes, I have made a mistake. Ganesh Mahipal appeared on this program 4 times and said damnifying things about the government. Cussed down senior members of the government 4 times. And he got on Facebook and say, these talk show hosts must give all kinds of political parties a voice. It's not only one set of people. And he was talking about Kiana Wilberg and Fariza Hanif and their show Starting Point. And so you and I called him. And he said, yeah. I made a mistake in leaving y'all out. I will correct it. The man never corrected it. The man never said, and I always had a good relation with Ganesh, stretching back these UG days. Craig, it's a simple thing. On the Facebook page, Freddie called me. Freddie called me and say, I left out the Freddie Kissoon show. On reflection, when I was saying the thing, it slipped me. All right, Freddie, that's a mistake. I'm sorry, man. Your show does give a platform to us in the PNC, etc. The man has never said it. Craig, why you have this cycle, self-degrading mentality of people and organization in this country that they cannot say, I'm sorry. I apologize.
I'm not sure I know how to explain that, but quite often people pin that only on politicians. But I think it's a pervasive thing in our society. You find that with business people. You find that with people who run NGOs. I think it's a problem with people when they have positions of authority, positions of power, and general public positions. I think when people ascend the desire to tell those who they have, especially those who they have quote unquote left behind, that they're sorry, I think you reach to the position where you're too big to say sorry. And I think it's a pervasive thing across the board in Guyana. And I don't have an explanation for it, but it's something that is present in our society. And we see it all the time. Business people, politicians, professors, across the board. And it will call for some sort of sociological study to try to understand why that is so in Guyana.
Craig, I want to give you an example because the operator signal, we have 4 minutes left, 6 minutes left. A letter was signed by 42 people, 38, I think 37 individuals, and 5 organizations headed by very prominent people. They sent a letter to President Ali in October 2022, and they said to him, Guyana has an obligation to save the global climate structure, and fossil fuel industry destroys the environment. And we think Guyana should come out of the fossil fuel industry and put a moratorium on oil production. And they went on to describe the effect of greenhouse emissions. And it said in the letter to President Ali, greenhouse emissions is deleterious, is harmful to people, it kills African people. Now, I was appalled when they mentioned one race only, because chemical output in certain insecticides, when it is used by humans, it kills them. Okay, they didn't say African, Arab, indigenous people. It said African people. I asked these people in several columns, how could they have said that? You know, there wasn't even one line of explanation where that was a mistake. Listen to the people who signed that letter to the president. Alicia Trotz, co-owner of the Starbook News, Isabella De Caries, Nigel Westmoss, a whole set of people, Danuta and Vanda Razdik Vera, who are always in the news. Those two sisters have taken the exile in the government to court. They have never said we made a mistake in naming African people only. So they're in an organization against genocide in Gaza. And I know one of the persons that they have befriended. And so I told that person, a friend of mine, who is a foreigner for an Arab country, that I can't associate with these people, although I am overzealous in my condemnation of what the Israelis are doing in Gaza. Because of that letter, those people wrote to the president and say, greenhouse emission only kill African people. You know, so the lady said, what? They said that in a letter. And she went and raised it with 2 of them. And instead of telling the lady, well, that was a mistake, you know what they told the lady? I can't remember we saying that in a letter. They wrote the president, said that in a letter. And these are 2 high-profile civil society activists that always criticize the government. They told that Arab lady, I can't remember, we said that? All they had to do was tell that lady, oh, man, yeah, you're right, that was a mistake. Greenhouse gas emission killed people in general.
And it's not just apology. Sometimes people when they attain position of responsibility, they don't take it as their duty to communicate to the public their actions. For example, just this week, there is an issue brewing against the GCAA and the Air Services of Guyana, the Maserali family. And they have been operating, and they're the largest operator in Guyana for 50, 60 years, before I was born. And for such an institution in Guyana to have a complaint against the head of the GCAA, and a reporter calls the head of the GCAA and says to him, we have this issue brewing, we have this complaint from the number one local aircraft owner. From here on, aircraft owner. And no, I'm quoting Kaichor News. Kaichor News says that all he said was, I don't want to talk about this, and hang up the phone. Now,
could you say he alleges it's reported by Kaichor that he said that? But we don't have any proof that he said that.
No,
but
obviously, I just said I'm reporting what Kaichor News said.
Well, I just
that all he said, that I don't want to talk about this, and hung up.
Okay, well, we in the two co-hosts, we don't know if he said that. We reported from Kaichor that he said that.
If what the Kaichor News said is so, it shows again that people who ascend and have awesome public responsibility don't think that they need. The guy could have simply said, confirm that there is something happening. I'm not at liberty to disclose the nature of our investigation.
And I will make a public statement.
Sometime the GCAA will communicate with the press. But to just say that I ain't interested in giving a comment and hang up, this is a person, I don't know the man, I've never met him, I don't have anything against the gentleman. But I'm saying that if you have this awesome responsibility, probably being paid millions of dollars of the taxpayers' money, and you're being asked to account for your stewardship, some of the simplest things, it's a simple thing that you could say, okay, or you say that, look, usually when we have these issues, I am not the one who make the public statements. Very shortly, our PR department will communicate, something like that. But it just shows, and these things, we have to curb these kinds of things in our society. That when people ascend to these positions with awesome responsibility, they got to know that they have a responsibility to communicate with the public, a responsibility to say I'm sorry, a responsibility to generally.
But I want to tell you, it cut across all dimensions in society.
Yeah,
it's government, opposition, business.
Yes.
You know, the banks have done. The commercial banks have done so much wrong things. The banks have done so much wrong things to people, and you never see a statement. On that note, we have to go. Please have a pleasant Monday evening, whatever is left of it. We will definitely continue with the Freddie Kissoon show on Wednesday, and we're working to have our call-in program in which we interact with Guyana and the Guyanese diaspora. On behalf of our operators and co-host Leonard Craig, as I normally say, catch you later. Bye-bye.